Welcome, everyone, to episode 2 of our SAMI podcast. For those that are joining in and don't know what SAMI is South Asians in Marketing and Insights. We are a community, 200 members so far. We started in November, and it's purely a volunteer-run little organization that has a big purpose of just essentially shifting our mindset to really uplift our community and those that we work with. So today I have Lindsay Brady. She's our president of Ornua. Really excited. If you know the brands, you know Kerrygold and how good that butter is. Definitely use it in my baking. And, the genesis of this conversation today was actually, I met Lindsay at CES and we were at a dinner, and debatable on if it was a dinner or not. Wink, wink for those that were there. And, I was just chit-chatting with Lindsay. Anyone who knows me, I asked those bold questions and had a lot of career questions for Lindsay and thought she was an amazing energy. We chatted separately afterwards, and I definitely just thought, hey, you should come on and speak to our community. This podcast today is not just focused on those trying to make a career pivot or in the job-seeking mindset. It's also for those that are just trying to really understand and reflect on where they are in their journey and how do they elevate their executive presence, especially as we hit some glass ceilings. How do we go beyond that and really address that kind of progression? So I'd like to invite Lindsay and would love for you to, share your wisdom with the total group.
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you so much for this opportunity. It's really important to me to share any learnings I've had that might help someone else. And so when you and I talked about this, I was really excited about it. And so thank you very much. So I've been the president of Kerrygold I just shortchange. Ornua is a very Irish word. No one really knows it. Everyone knows Kerrygold. So I've been the president of Kerrygold for North and Latin America for about 2 years now. Prior to that, ran large businesses for publicly traded packaged foods companies, and have learned a lot along the way through trial, error, failure and success, and have somehow worked my way into one of the happiest chapters of my career. And so when you and I were talking, I'm like, gosh, I wonder if there's something that I can share that would be of value. So hopefully that works out today.
Yeah, would love that. So let's talk about that happy chapter. Let's talk about what makes it happy for you.
Yeah, so I work for an Irish dairy cooperative. So we work in service of 14,000 Irish dairy farms, and they're actually all family owned. Average herd size is 100 cows, which is so cool. And so for me, along the way, I kind of honed in on a personal or a professional mission. And this really helps me live into that. And so every single day I go into work and I'm very purpose led and I'm excited. I find the work very meaningful. On top of that, candidly, this was a promotion when I took the job. And that's always exciting because I am ambitious and I want to advance my career. And I really feel like I'm able to kind of be the leader that I want to be by virtue of I run, a division of a company. Our corporate headquarters are in Dublin, back in Ireland. So I really get to set the tone and the culture for my team and the business agenda and then deliver against it. So it's just been really meaningful, I think, for me. And then on top of that, one of the cool things about working for this particular company is it's very smart people who are very low ego. And I love that. It's like being low ego is a core value of mine for sure. And so it's just been a really fun chapter. I was joking with my team actually the other day because this is probably the first time in my career where I can say categorically, I love all my colleagues, which sounds really sad, but you always like a few of them, right? But this is like one where I could go out for a drink with literally any of my colleagues and have just the best time. So it's just been a really fun chapter.
I love that. So actually I know we said we would do Q&A at the end, but actually I'm just going to hone in on it right now. So talk to me a little bit about how you were progressing your career and you were moving into this executive role and you shifted your reputation from that, reliable executor to more of a strategic leader and how you communicated the culture that you're going to bring into the company.
Yeah. I mean, I think there are a couple things that take you from like individual contributor to strategic leader. And there's some very basic ones, but I'll comment on them because look, not everyone grows up with the same like type of training I had. And I had the benefit of having some great mentors. Like first and foremost, I think you have to be able to deliver results and deliver results consistently. And that sounds really obvious, but I think it's a really important kind of base for your career. I also think you have to have really high EQ, which helps you navigate stakeholders wherever you are in the organization, right? And, I've even heard about like SQ, like social quotient moving forward, because like the broader environment really dictates a lot of the business environments that we have to operate in as leaders. But then I think for me, what separates an individual contributor or reliable an executor from a leader is, for me, like when you're a contributor, you're basically climbing the mountain in a very simple sense. And then when you're a leader, you have to decide which mountain you need to climb. And so I think, and that is a hard skill. And so like, I think as you become a higher and higher leader in your organization, it's not just about doing the work, it's what is the right work to do? Yeah. What is the aspiration we have for this business? What are the choices that we can make to best get to that aspiration? How do I think about allocating my resources, my time, my energy, my teams to deliver against that? And for me, that's like the shift in leader is like from climbing a mountain to picking which mountain you need to climb. Strategy also, I feel like can be a daunting word sometimes because it's like, well, I remember like early on in my career, like, what does that actually mean? And I think over time it has come to mean for me, number one, define what good looks like. What is the outcome that you think will be fantastic in the marketplace or wherever you work? Number two, if that's the outcome you want, what are the choices? And you have to be intentional and data-based and disciplined about the choices. But what are the variety of choices we can make to get to that aspiration? And then you have to prioritize, right? Because you can't do everything. And the reality is usually 2 or 3 choices are going to be the key unlocks to getting to your business aspiration versus 10. And then once you have your choices, it's like, okay, well, what are the activities that we're going to line up behind these choices? And then you you put in KPIs and a tracking mechanism, and then you track and then you course correct. And like, for me, that's what good strategy is all about, is like define what fantastic looks like, figure out the choices, get the activities rolling, and then start tracking and understanding if the choices are delivering the outcomes that you want.
Yeah, totally. Okay, I have too many things I want to address here, but I really loved the social quotient, the emotional, EQ, obviously SQ. One, I was talking to someone who leads research at Meta a couple of weeks ago, and she shared with me the AQ. So being agile as a skill.
Oh, yeah.
And I mean, that's totally needed as we see the shifting landscape overall. Like, I'm going to make broad statement, shifting landscape, right? Yeah. I mean, any thoughts on agility overall and how to best communicate that, whether you're looking for a new job or you're trying to grow in that company and showcase that is part of leadership now?
Yeah. I mean, as I was with my broader team yesterday, and we actually talked about agility because it's probably the number one thing that we've had to lean on to navigate our external environment over the past 2 years. And just for context, we're an all import business. So the current trade kind of tenor with the Trump administration is it's changing quickly, and we have to figure out a way to address it to still deliver against our business. And, I think some keys for us are, well, number one, we scenario plan. So agility just doesn't happen. Like, you scenario plan and you prepare for agility so that when things happen, you have at least a working plan of what you're going to go do. The other thing about agility, I think, is you have to figure out the right amount of information you need to make a decision and then make the decision. And the right amount of information often is not 100%. It's having 60% of the information and then moving forward, and then you can course correct. The reality is nothing is final. Nothing is ever permanent or final. I read Colin Powell's autobiography, and he was talking about when he was leading the Gulf War, how he had to make decisions with 40% of the information. Because if he waited until he had 60%, it was too late, it was done, people were dead. And I do take a lot of kind of value from that statement because, and especially in the last few years, like the reality is things are changing so quickly. You make a decision today, it actually might be wrong tomorrow, but and so sometimes actually waiting is not bad.
Yeah, true.
Like just pause for a minute and take a breath.
Yeah.
But our team talks a lot about agility and driving decisions quickly so that we can move forward. So I love that idea. Okay, I'm going to start using that. AQ.
I know. I was like, should I gatekeep that? But it is totally in line with the conversation.
Yeah.
I mean, okay, I'm going to put my insights hat on.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking about, only having 60% of the data that you need for decisions, how do you lean on your amazing insights partners? I've met one of them who's super phenomenal and has a high intuition as well and a wealth of experience, that big body of evidence. How do you lean on them to help make those agile decisions or, sort of plan for the future?
Yeah. I mean, so Shalini, I think I've said this, but like all the organizations where I've worked, like the insights professionals were like power brokers because they were so impactful. They were always at the table with their senior leadership. And that's how I operate because I think there's so much value from being data-based and critically thinking through a problem. So I do tend to leverage them quite heavily. And for me, it's about really relying on, the individual you're speaking about is very intuitive and very savvy, and it's got some great pattern recognition, right? So he breaks down problems really in simple ways. But I think for me, it's about working as a team to triangulate data and to leverage what you have. I mean, there's so much data floating out, especially when you look at the US market, right? And that's maybe a US specific market, but there is a lot of data out in the world in general now.
Yep.
And so leveraging the data you have around you to triangulate and then from pattern recognition, draw conclusions from it, I think is something that we do over and over and over again. And, even if it's not like a consumer facing problem, I'm still using data and I'm still using the data we have to triangulate and then move forward.
Yep. Okay, let's shift back to career narrative. So what this was all about. I would love to ask you, what are some signals that really have helped you in the past or should help folks right now to determine whether they should pivot their career narrative? I'd love for you to speak about that, especially as everything is shifting quite rapidly.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking about so in 2019, I remember, so I'd only worked for like large publicly traded food companies, right? And I remember in 2019, it was probably more like 2017, 2018, like all the big food companies were getting crushed by all these insurgent brands. And I looked around and, it's very easy to get have blinders on around the only path to success is this big company and the way that they do things. And, and I picked my head up and I'm like, we're getting crushed. And there's so much growth and value coming out of these insurgent brands. Like there's something happening at the other end of the industry that I need to understand. Yep. And so based on that, I actually started getting involved in the startup community in Chicago. So I kept my day job, but I started getting involved in the startup community in Chicago. And then also randomly, I got involved in some venture fund advising for like Series C startups, which again, it was more about learning about kind of the smaller, more agile end of the food industry, which I did learn. And so I guess for me, the signal is, well, first of all, never think that one place is it or one path, or because when I look around me, there are so many different ways to create value in this world and so many different paths. And often I have not taken the direct linear path up, but I've meandered a little, and it's actually created a really rich and meaningful career for me. But I think if you feel like you're not in a winning place that's creating value, pick your head up and see where it is, and then go learn from those people. I think that's a really kind of important thing. Like nine times out of 10, part of winning is being in growing winning categories and industries. I mean, honestly, so.
Yeah, it's really fruitful. I mean, I was just having a coffee chat with one of our SAMI members that I was introduced to this week, and she was considering the past place that I was working at most recently. And I told her, and probably someone's going to call me out for saying this, but was it enjoyable from a personal standpoint? Probably not, because I worked so hard and my colleagues know I traveled all the time, but it was one of the most fruitful places because of the dynamic nature of a smaller business that I did. I went in working on brands that I knew a couple brands, but I didn't really know them. But because they were so fast moving, fast growing, there's a lot of autonomy in how you place them. We didn't have any foundational insights, but we're able to really leverage them for key marketing levers and building, new campaign or brand essence. Like those things, you rarely get a chance to be a builder. If you're in the larger corporations, you're just trying to run with what there is existing and make use of it. But there's beauty in being in challenging environments that really stretch you. I mean, I would have paid them to work there, actually. It was a great second MBA, honestly.
I believe that. I mean, so first of all, you're cueing in on something really important, because I'm also a builder. And along the way, I figured that out. And I figured it out by kind of happenstance. But when I figured that out, I'm like, I don't want to just maintain a business. Like, I want to go build stuff. And, I want my work to have a significant impact. And so I think understanding that about yourself, like, what are the environments you thrive in? And that sounds very obvious, but honestly, many people are not intentional about it. So I guess my push is just be intentional about it. Think about the type of work environments, the type of culture, the type of work that you actually like doing and get energy doing. And if you really clarify that, I think it'll help you it's helped me be more focused in my job searches, which has led to better outcomes.
Yeah, even in roles. I mean, I felt like when I was at General Mills, I was in primary research, and then I knew, a lot of my mentors kept saying, you need to be more strategic. I had no idea what that meant, but I kept being very specific about asking for a role that would help me in understanding the total business and how a business is actually run. And my next role was totally there that really helped unleash me on the next trait. So I want to ask you, in your experience as a president, what is one trait or leverage point you see in leaders that makes them invaluable to an organization, and especially in turbulent times?
Yeah, I think, some of it we've already talked about, this whole idea of agility and EQ and results delivery. But I also think the other thing is resilience. And, I've learned this is, I've got a big job. There's a lot of good stuff and a lot of bad stuff that comes at me every day on the business, on my team, whatever it is. And to be steady for your team is really important, and to absorb stress and not transition it onto them, right? And for them to know, even if it's a bad time, like, we'll be okay. And even if it's a good time, we can't get too comfortable. And so I think resilience is one of those ones. And honestly, resilience is why I got to where I am professionally anyways. Because look, I have failed in my career before, but when I fail, I pick myself back up, and I still have my eye on the end goal of my career aspiration, and I keep moving forward. And that's a huge life skill, and then professional skill, I think.
Yeah,
you touched on something earlier that I want to just pull the string on, because part of, I think, I don't know if changing your narrative, but part of what I learned the way is actually sharing your narrative is critical. So I kind of learned along the way that if you're not creating the narrative around what you want out of your career, someone might make it up for you. And especially actually if you're a woman, or if you're a parent with children, or a person who has outside needs or outside, commitments outside of the office. And so I've learned, first of all, don't let anyone make up the narrative about you. You control the narrative about you, and you tell people what you want. And the other thing I learned is, at some point along the way, I was like a senior brand manager, I remember. And, I was like, okay, this is going okay in my career. I think I want to continue to advance. I think I want to be a VP. And then I went to a leadership course, and they're like, aim as high as you can. So at that moment in time, I started telling people I wanted to be a CEO. And I didn't know if I wanted to be a CEO, but I'm like, look, I might as well try for it. And then if I get to that point, I can always turn it down if it's not interesting at that point. So I literally built up this habit of meeting with people in my organization, like my manager, my manager's manager, usually whoever was in charge of HR, and sharing my story around, this is my background. This is my career aspiration. This is what I'm working on in service of that. If you have any feedback, I'd welcome it. And do you have any other advice for me? And what was interesting as I started sharing that, it can be a little uncomfortable, but that's what networking is just talking. And people got to know me, they got to know what I wanted, and then they actually actively started looking for opportunities to help me.
Amazing.
So I got like my first VP job. It was because I had met with the chief human resources officer like 2 months before, told her I wanted to be a CEO, that I needed more end-to-end experience, deeper in supply chain. And then this role came up that was actually perfect for enabling that. And so I was actually on the short list of candidates and got the opportunity to interview for it. And I wouldn't have had that if I didn't have that conversation with her.
Yeah. I mean, what advice do you have along those lines of controlling your own narrative and speaking out about it? I mean, obviously you're speaking in the context of, when you have those personal connections, but let's talk about the age of LinkedIn, social media. Do you have any thoughts? It's okay if you have any hot takes. I know I didn't prep you on this question, but any takes on that, any thoughts there?
Well, I would say, and this goes back to the EQ thing, you always have to be cautious about how you present these conversations. And I will be straight up like gender bias weighs into that, like cultural bias. And so you also need to be like kind of, I guess, astute and aware of your audience and who you're trying to influence and what's going to be the best way to influence them. So for example, I've worked in organizations where it wasn't viewed favorably if someone aggressively pushed their career. So that how I approached that conversation was very different. I think in places like social media, it's tricky, honestly, because you're speaking to such a large audience. And so, tailoring your message in a strategic way is a little tricky. But what I talk about, so there are certain things that I will talk about in terms of my career online that are unassailable. Like, I am a purpose-led leader. I know what purpose I want to deliver in the world, and that is who I am and who I will be no matter what. And so, like, I don't feel weird about sharing that. And that is it's not divisive, right? Like, it's, and people can kind of glom onto it if they want to or not. But it's a good question.
Okay, we have, as you know, we have a little backstage audience. So we have some questions there that we want to ask. I'm going to start with, did your definition of success evolve at different life stages, and how did that influence the roles you chose?
Totally. Yes, that's such a great question. I mean,
especially, I maybe want to probe you also there, especially because earlier you spoke about how you failed, in certain aspects of your course. So if you want to bring in some of those quick learnings as well.
I mean, so like I'm not making it up, but like post MBA, like I was an associate brand manager working at Campbell Soup Company, and my definition of success was getting a brand manager. And hopefully getting like a high rating, right? And like doing well there, right? Over time, I started to really think about like, what do I actually want? Because you kind of get in a hustle, right? And it's day to day, it's busy, and you're working 80 hours a week, and it's a lot, and it's a competitive environment. At some point along the way, I really took a step back and said, okay, I want to make a big impact. I'm a builder. I don't want to just push pencils around for the duration of my career. Like, I need to clarify what I think I want to contribute, and what I have to offer. And through that, I started to clarify that my professional mission is shaping the face of what the food industry looks like for the next 50 years. And for me, that means sustainable value creators and then positive human impact. And if I'm really going to do that, then I really need to think about building the next generation of leaders and change agents. So that became my definition of success. Nice. And I started to orient my time, my energy to enabling that. And along the way, I actually also clarified, like, how do I want to show up in my personal life, which I wasn't doing a good job of at the time. And I think, that simple process of what do I want professionally, like at the end of all this, at the end of, 100 years from now, when I'm finally on my deathbed, I want to have been this type of professional and made this type of impact. And I wanted to have shown up like this for my family and my friends. And so like, that was like just a huge unlock for me, because it helped me choose jobs, to put myself at the bottom of a learning curve, because if I'm really going to change like the food industry, I got to learn a lot about it. Right. And then this is like the other cool thing that has happened, I think, over time is your career is no longer about you. It's about the people around you and how you're supporting them. And so, I still have those personal ambitions, but what is most fulfilling, like if I'm coming home on a Friday night and having a happy glass of wine, is if I know that I've helped someone else live to their aspiration, coach them for success. They have, a bigger raise because, we've offered them a good opportunity that helps their family out. Like that's what it's about at this point.
Totally.
And so it actually gets sweeter over time, I would say.
Totally. Yeah, excuse me. Yeah, totally. I mean, in summary, it's very introspective. The goals are not about what others are going to perceive of you. It's the goals are what are you succeeding for yourself and what derives that energy. I mean, that's why SAMI was created, because we just felt we needed a space to help other people. And that's why we have folks like you, like the low ego folks that are willing to come in and just genuinely share all of their wisdom and knowledge and guidance overall. So appreciate that. We're going to do one last question. So we have the question, if someone is contemplating a shift from long-standing career in large-scale companies to more meaningful career in a mid-sized company, they're feeling excited but nervous about the transition, what would you like to share with them about making sure that they have a successful transition? And I'm seeing this a lot in the industry. It's not even about the people that were reorged or returned to office. It's literally a lot of folks are just tired of not having that impact on the business. When you're in larger scale, they want to go more mid-size or smaller. And you're seeing the disruptive growth, especially in CPG, from those companies. So what advice do you have there?
Yeah, I mean, that was the transition I made in this last role, and it was one that was exciting. And I think the company was nervous because they're like, she's only worked for big companies. Does she really know how to come in a lower resource environment and build? But actually, I knew I liked to build. And I'd always worked in, over the years, even if you're in a big company, you're working for scrappier teams that might not be as heavily resourced or whatever. So I think that there are some really, the reality is it's not a super hard transition, but I think also going in eyes wide open. So the thing that I always like to clarify is like, well, what type of mid-sized company are we talking about? Because growing up in a large CPG environment, I'm not adding value to a $50 million company. That's not where I'm adding value. Or probably what I would really enjoy doing. Where I'm adding value is once it gets to, call it the $1 billion stage, and the job is to scale it to $2 billion. So just being intentional about like, what is the actual work at the size company that you are looking at. Before I made the transition, I did start to learn about this, like the smaller company kind of end of the food industry. And that actually gave me a lot of insight to what that work might look like. So if there are opportunities to network, even before you make a transition or start interviewing, I think that can be really helpful. But I also think clarifying the value that you feel like you could provide from your prior experience to the company where they are in their life cycle is just a critical part of selling yourself in those types of opportunities. I will say I've made the transition. I love it. Like I love being more in charge, setting direction on the culture and the business in a much deeper way than I ever have.
Totally.
It's been really exciting, actually. And so I think this whole excited but nervous is a great place to go in. And like the other thing I would say about any transition is go in eyes wide open around your blind spots and potential issues. And not so you're like nervous about them, but so you can plan around them and put support in place to help you manage through those transitions and those watch outs.
Nice. I think that's good advice, even for those that are job seeking themselves. It's like, no, you may not be asked it, but if you're able to, productively address in scenarios that you're getting caught up, different questions you're being asked, or, they're noticing this is a blind spot. At least you have a plan of action on how to address it. How do you want to go after it? I mean, that's what I just literally learned from you. I'm reflecting lifetime. I'm reflecting real time. So wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Lindsay. This has been excellent as always. And we really appreciate it. Any closing thoughts?
No, it's just really my pleasure. I appreciate the opportunity, and I hope everyone has a great rest of your day.